Which Blackhawks need to step up the most with Connor Bedard out of the lineup?
You're Locked On Blackhawks, your daily podcast on the Chicago Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of Locked On Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and now your number one sports podcasting network. I'm your host, Jack Bushman. On today's episode, I'll preview tonight's Original Six matchup between the Blackhawks and Toronto to kick off the three-game road trip. Then I'll also discuss which Blackhawks need to step up the most with Connor Bedard being out for at least the rest of December. And then in segment 3, I'll also get into the latest updates on former first-round pick Lukas Reichel. But first, do have to let you all know that today's episode is once again sponsored by FanDuel. Go and check out FanDuel.com right now to place your live NFL bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you. All right, happy game day, Blackhawks fans, as the three-game road trip up in Canada kicks off here tonight in Toronto with the second and final matchup between these two teams and yet another Original Six matchup. Lots of them on the schedule for the Blackhawks here just before Christmas, with the New York Rangers coming to town last Wednesday. There was the meeting with Patrick Kane, Alex DeBrincat, and the Detroit Red Wings on Saturday night. Then we got this game against the Maple Leafs, as well as Thursday's contest against the Montreal Canadiens as well. Tonight's matchup, by the way, puck drop is scheduled for 6 p.m. Central Time, with the game obviously being on the East Coast, and will be televised on CHSN. And of course, it's the second game in a row for the Blackhawks without number 98 Connor Bedard in the lineup, which will at least be the case for the next 6 games here on the schedule to close out December, and likely for at least a couple in early January, as I broke down on yesterday's show. Quick reminder, if you missed out on my reaction to the Connor Bedard injury update from head coach Jack Bushman, my thoughts on the prognosis, make sure to go and check out yesterday's episode of Locked On Blackhawks, as I broke it all down there. But yeah, it's not going to be easy for the Blackhawks without Connor Bedard. He's likely going to miss somewhere between, if I had to guess, 8 to 12 consecutive contests. And yeah, the Blackhawks are just going to have to sack up and try to find a way to push through without him. And I'll be talking more about how they can do that in just a couple of minutes here in segment 2. But as far as a quick breakdown, on Toronto, what have the Maple Leafs been up to since the first meeting, which came just about a month ago, back on December 15th at the United Center, which resulted in a nice victory for the Blackhawks. But Toronto is now 14-12-5 coming into Tuesday, which currently has them as the third worst team in the entire Eastern Conference, with just 33 points through 31 games. And after going 3-6-2 to close out November, which included a 5-game losing skid capped off by a loss to the Blackhawks on a Saturday game that marked 5 losses in a row for Toronto at that time. They have been a little bit better over these last few weeks. They're off to a decent start here in December with a 3-1-2 record in their opening 6 games in the final month of 2025. But they are coming into this one off of 2 consecutive losses, as they fell 3-2 to the San Jose Sharks last Thursday, and then also were defeated 6-3 by Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, in the Edmonton Oilers on Saturday night. And altogether, it's been a kind of strange year for the Maple Leafs. First and foremost, Auston Matthews obviously was a little quieter than usual on the offensive side of things last year. Well, that's been the case and has been even more prevalent so far here in 25-26. Auston Matthews has just 21 points in 26 games, which for a guy who's going to be a staple of the United States roster at the upcoming Olympics, which, knock on wood, that actually goes down. Hopefully that test event at the arena over in Italy, set for early January, goes pretty well, and NHL players are still allowed to participate in this tournament. But definitely not the vibes that you want, Captain America to be rocking going into that tournament. Auston Matthews only has 13 goals in 26 games so far this year. For a guy who, was regularly potting 40, right on the precipice of 71 year in the NHL, for him to only have 13 so far this year, along with only 8 assists, single-digit assists for Auston Matthews in 26 games, well over a quarter of the way through the season now, is definitely a little strange. William Nylander has still been productive as he usually is with 33 points. However, he only has 11 goals in 26 games or 28 games, I believe he's played on the year for the Maple Leafs. Matthew Knies is having a good year with 29 points, but he only has 7 goals. Somehow, despite, the big dogs not really leading the charge like they normally do for Toronto, they are 6th in the NHL in goals scored per game, but it feels like John Tavares has picked up some of the slack in that category, but it feels like it's not coming from their, main guys, their top 2 liners offensively like it has for quite a while up in Toronto. Also, another stat to point out, 30th in the NHL on the power play, which, they lost Mitch Marner this year. I know he's obviously a key playmaker for the man advantage and a lot of things ran through him, but still with all the talent that the Leafs possess, I mean, Matthews, Knies, Tavares, Riley, Nylander, they have a super stacked top power play unit, and for them to be 30th in the NHL is definitely a little odd, and I'm sure why some of those guys' offensive numbers aren't what we normally see them at. And then the Leafs are also 23rd in the NHL in goals against this year. Defense has been pretty shaky all season. The goaltending has been a little bit better as of late. Dennis Hildeby has been huge for them. Joseph Woll, who actually made his first start of the season in Chicago when these two teams met for the first time back on December 15th. He had missed all of the season up to that point in time with an injury. He's kind of helped settle things down in between the pipes as well for the Leafs here as of late, but he's been out since December 4th as well. But what I saw in a news article from Sportsnet coming into this one is there's a good chance that Woll could be returning. So something about him and the Blackhawks, him and the Maple Leafs, playing the Blackhawks makes it always seems like Joseph Woll is able to return in those types of games. We'll see if he gets the start in between the pipes for Toronto here tonight. As far as the Blackhawks projected lineup for tonight's matchup, I'm obviously recording this prior to the morning skate here today, but the reasoning for that is because the Hawks rolled through forward lines and defensive pairings at practice yesterday, and they were the exact same as they were on Saturday night against the Red Wings, despite, the Blackhawks getting shut out for the third time in 11 games. Looks like Blashill is going to run that lineup back for a second consecutive contest, and I definitely have some feelings on that, Hawks fan. So first, I'm going to go through the projected lines here for tonight's game and then kind of run through how I would be handling the Blackhawks lineup right here, right now, if I was in Jeff Blashill's shoes. So as far as the forward group goes, Tyler Bertuzzi, Frank Nazar, and Andrei Burakovsky were the top line for the Hawks in their first game without Connor Bedard on Saturday. And I had a feeling, Nazar was probably going to be put with one of those two big guns on the wing, whether, Tyler Bertuzzi or Andrei Burakovsky. But I honestly didn't expect both of them to be on the top line with Nazar. Quite honestly, that's where I thought Nick Lardis was going to slot into the lineup. But I do, kind of understand Blashill loading up with, his 3 most consistent offensive weapons outside of Connor Bedard on the top line. To kind of load things up there. The second line for the Blackhawks on Saturday, Teuvo Teravainen, Jason Dickinson, and Ilya Mikheyev. And as I'll get into here in just a moment, I'm not sure that's the best spot for Teuvo Teravainen right now to kind of help out the Blackhawks offense, along with 2 defensive-minded forwards in a checking line role. Then the third line, the all-rookie line for the Blackhawks. This is where we saw Nick Lardis get positioned in the lineup for his NHL debut on the left wing spot, along with Ryan Green, who was back in the center ice position. No real surprise there. The Blackhawks need help down the middle without Connor Bedard. And then Oliver Moore played on the right wing slot. And I thought those 3, had some really good sequences with one another. The opening 10, 15 minutes of the game, they were definitely the Blackhawks' most effective line. They were moving the puck well with one another. It's pretty clear that Oliver Moore and Nick Lardis have spent some time playing down in Rockford and in training camp with one another. They were moving the puck pretty well. And I do think, Ryan Green down the middle, Jeff Blashill said the reasoning for why he went with 3 rookies on the same line is because they're all kind of in the similar situation, all around the same age group, all kind of in the same position right here, right now. I kind of do understand that, but as I'll get into in just a second, like I said a moment ago, don't know if that's the best position long-term for Nick Lardis and for the team's offense without Connor Bedard. And then rounding things out on the fourth line, expect to see Colton Dach and Ryan Donato on the wings. And then I think we're going to see Dominic Toninato playing his second consecutive game up in the NHL with the Blackhawks. They do need help at the center ice position right now. Ryan Donato, I give him a lot of credit for doing a serviceable job stepping into that position as more so a guy that's played most of his career on the wing so far. But I do think it's smart to have a true center like Dominic Toninato centering that fourth line as opposed to, Ryan Donato, who is mostly playing on the wing, Sam Lafferty, who can play center but doesn't really have the best career faceoff win percentage. And with Connor Bedard out, I know he's still under the 50% margin for the season, but outside of Jason Dickinson, he's been the Blackhawks' best center iceman. Frankie Nazar, Ryan Green, Ryan Donato all have numbers well below the 50% Mendoza line. So I understand putting a real center iceman in that position in Toninato down on the fourth line. That leaves Sam Lafferty as the only healthy scratch. I expect that to be the case once again for the Blackhawks tonight, like it was on Saturday. Do want to mention as well, though, that Nick Foligno, the captain, who injured his hand in the first meeting with the Maple Leafs back on December 15th, was originally given right around a month timeline to return to the Blackhawks lineup. He's not going to be playing tonight, but he is traveling with the Blackhawks during this upcoming road trip, as is Connor Bedard, which I love to hear Blackhawks fans going in, supporting the boys during the road trip. I do think that's a really good decision by Connor to add some life into that locker room and be there to support his teammates during this tough time. So love to hear that. And love to hear that Nick Foligno seems to be getting closer to his potential return. However, I'm not sure how likely it is that he actually plays during this road trip because according to CHGO Blackhawks on social media yesterday, they saw Foligno, who was on the ice prior to practice skating, as he's been for the last week or so now. He was stick handling. He was going through some things individually prior to the practice session beginning, but he was not seen shooting the puck. So I'm not sure if he's been cleared to shoot yet. And if that is the case, which it seems to be, not sure he's exactly ready to return by Thursday or Saturday during this upcoming road trip, but definitely a positive that Nick Foligno seems to be getting closer. On defense for the Blackhawks, pretty straightforward. Alex Vlasic, Louis Crevier as the top pairing, Matt Grzelcyk, Artem Levshinov as the second pairing, and then Wyatt Kaiser and Wyatt Kaiser and Connor Murphy as the third pairing, likely leaving Ethan Del Mastro in the seventh defenseman spot. I do think EDM probably draws in for one of these three games. Maybe Blashill goes back to an 11 forward, 7 defenseman lineup and drops Toninato out for a game and has he and Lafferty be healthy scratches. Just something I'm thinking in my mind. But I do imagine with Del Mastro's age, I feel like the Blackhawks will probably give him one opportunity during this 3-game road trip. And then in goal, I'm expecting it to be Spencer Knight with Arvid Soderblom playing last on Saturday. Blackhawks would love to start off this road trip on a high note, and Spencer Knight got the win over the Maple Leafs in the first meeting of the season, and he's now 2-1-0 with a 3.07 GAA, 897 save percentage. Okay numbers in his 3 career starts against Toronto, but undoubtedly has been a lot better than Arvid Soderblom here as of late. Before I get into segment 2, do just want to go through some quick forward lines that I personally would be going with if I was in Jeff Blashill's shoes, because while I understand why he has the lineup as it is right now, ultimately I don't think it's going to work long term, and I do feel like he's going to have to space things out a little bit more to try to get some scoring from maybe more than just the top line of Bertuzzi, Nazar, and Burakovsky. My top line that I would be going with, I'd be putting Nick Lardis there right now. I know he's only played one NHL game, but the way that he handled the puck, the way that he was, moving it around with his line mates, the way that he was shooting it from all spots and not afraid to do so at 5-on-5 and on the man advantage, had a real good opportunity to get his first NHL goal. Nick Lardis looks like he can already play top 6 minutes for the Blackhawks. And I feel like they kind of need his shooting with Connor Bedard out. They're going to need help offensively. So to me, I would go with Nick Lardis, Frankie Nazar, and Tyler Bertuzzi as the top line. I just think with Nazar, he's faster than Lardis, but Lardis provides some good wheels as well. Can have Tyler Bertuzzi in the net front role, try to score some greasy goals there in that manner while you allow Lardis and Nazar's skill to kind of get it done on the outside. And Nick Lardis can be the shooter of that line. Frankie Nazar is the playmaker. Tyler Bertuzzi is the net front presence. That's the way that I would go about the Blackhawks top line. On the second line, this is where I get a little bit different than Blashill as well. I think Teuvo Teravainen needs to be up in the top 6 right now because he's being a little wasted on that third line with Dickinson and Mikheyev. I don't think Teravainen's like the most creative player in the world. However, the Blackhawks don't have a ton of creativity without Connor Bedard, and it's clear that third line, well, they can do good things defensively, and the Blackhawks will need that without Bedard, but they're also going to have to score goals to keep up with the opposing team. And I just feel like you need Teuvo Teravainen's skill set in the top six right now. And quite honestly, I don't think Ryan Green, I love Ryan Green, and he's been really good, but I don't know if you can rely on him from a consistent offensive standpoint. And I just feel like Ryan Donato, I know it wasn't under Jeff Blashill, and I know he hasn't been a consistent offensive threat recently, but he's also been buried in the lineup down on the fourth and third line these last couple of weeks, not getting nearly as much of an opportunity last year. And while he is more so of a wing, I think you can play him down the center ice position, play him with Teuvo Teravainen, and I think he's going to give you more consistent offensive looks and a shoot-first mentality that kind of goes against what Ryan Green provides. Let me know in the comment section if you feel the same way, if you feel like Ryan Donato could get another look here in the top six with Connor Bedard out of the lineup. And that leaves Andre Burakovsky on the right wing. I just feel like having a Teravainen, Donato, Burakovsky second line as opposed to an all-rookie line, well, they definitely can do some good things a couple of nights. From a consistency standpoint, I'm a little concerned about how they're going to fare on a nightly basis. So that's kind of why I'd split that up. And then you can go and throw Oliver Moore on the third line and Teuvo Teravainen's spot, have him play with Jason Dickinson and Ilya Mikheyev. I think that's still a really good fit defensively, and you're not kind of wasting Teuvo Teravainen's creativity down on that third line by elevating him into the top six. Oliver Moore can kind of do the same things he does defensively, but with better wheels. And then the fourth line, to me, that leaves Colton Dach, Ryan Green back in his natural spot of the fourth line center role, along with either Dominic Toninato or Sam Lafferty there on the fourth line. I just think Ryan Green, relying on him to be a consistent offensive force with Nick Lardis, Oliver Moore, I don't know. I hope it works well for the Blackhawks, but from a consistency standpoint, I have some concerns about how they're going to play regularly together, being all rookies without a lot of experience. So that's how I personally would be handling the Blackhawks forward group right here, right now. But obviously, Jeff Blashill, he's the head coach. He's going with a little bit of a different look, the same look that the Blackhawks rolled with on Saturday night. We're going to have to wait and see if it fares any better as a unit than they did against the Red Wings, and hopefully can put a couple of goals in the back of the net. All right, that is going to take care of my quick preview of the projected lineup for tonight out in Toronto. Coming up in just a moment, Blackhawks fans, I'll talk about who must step up in Bedard's absence to keep the team competitive. But first, I got to talk to you all about one of today's sponsors here on Locked On Blackhawks, which is FanDuel. NFL Sundays move fast. One big play, and suddenly everything feels different. But that's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. And with FanDuel, you can place live bets as the action unfolds. Every drive, every momentum swing, and every highlight moment. And live betting is best when the game starts to shift, when a receiver gets hot, when a defense tightens up, or when the momentum flips right after a turnover. FanDuel lets you jump right into the moment so that you can bet next touchdown scores, drive results, totals, and more. It keeps you locked into every snap, every drive, and every possibility. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, go and visit FanDuel.com to place your NFL live bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you. As always, just before I get into segment 2, a quick reminder to please go smash that like button and to subscribe to Locked On Blackhawks on YouTube. Have a goal of reaching 3,000 before 2025 comes to a close, and would greatly appreciate all your help in making that happen. It's 100% free, will not cost you anything, and helps me out in a major way in growing my platform. Segment 2 here on today's show, Life Without Bedard, as I put in the YouTube thumbnail today, is not going to be an easy task for the Blackhawks, as we learned on Saturday night. And we know Bedard, he's been so instrumental to this team, accounting in on nearly 50% of the goals through 32 games this year, as I broke down on yesterday's show. Make no mistake about it, the Blackhawks will not be the same without him. No one solely can step into Connor Bedard's place and fill that role. However, there are key players who can step up, as Blashill talked about, while, the Hawks have really been leaning on Bedard to score some of those key goals this season, there's going to be other guys who are going to have to step up and fill that void and give some of these young players a major opportunity to kind of take the reins here and try and help the Blackhawks remain competitive without 98 in the lineup. And it's been a tough stretch for the Blackhawks, even with Bedard over these last couple of weeks, as they have just 3 wins in their last 10 games. They're now 3 points back of a playoff spot in the Western Conference. But if the Blackhawks can somehow find a way to scrap together, I mean, assuming Connor Bedard misses what? He's going to be out for the final 7 games here of December. Assuming he misses 3 to 5 games at least in early January, you're looking at somewhere between 10 to 12 games. I'll just go with 10 since it's an easy round number. Could be more, could be less, obviously. But if the Hawks can, find a way to, man, I know it's going to be, if they can find a way to get 1.5 points of them, which I know is some lofty expectations, but they can find a way to go, 3-5-2 over these next 10 games without Bedard and, continue to just pick away and get some points without him. I do think it's possible for the Blackhawks to remain in playoff position, but obviously that's going to be easier said than done. But as far as the players that need to step up the most without Connor Bedard in the lineup, that's what I wanted to talk about here for a quick second. I got 5 of them that I wanted to mention, starting off with Tyler Bertuzzi, who has been great all year, just under a point per game player with Chicago, has been awesome reuniting with Jeff Blashill thus far. It's been incredible on the man advantage. Second leading goal scorer for the Blackhawks so far this season. And the Hawks are really going to need that goal scoring prowess out of Bertuzzi without 98 in the lineup, which, again, like I just said, easier said than done because a lot of those goals have been coming with Connor Bedard picking up the primary assist. But one thing in particular Blashill mentioned following yesterday's practice, was that the Blackhawks, they need to score grittier goals without Bedard in the lineup because they're not going to be the same flashy group. They're not going to have him to, lug the mail up the ice and into the offensive zone and make something happen. They're not going to be having some of those pretty plays that we've seen with Bedard this season occur all that frequently. They need to, play simplified hockey, crash the net, get pucks on cage, and score some greasy goals. And that's, Tyler Bertuzzi's forte. So we definitely need him to step up in that category. It's not going to be easy for him to create offensively without Bedard, as, he's not the greatest playmaker in the world, doesn't have a ton of speed. But as far as greasy goals go, and this is a reason why I wanted to play him with Nick Lardis, because with Lardis's, shoot first mentality, as I've talked about, I feel like, putting the best net front presence guy on the team and Tyler Bertuzzi along with him could potentially lead to some good things offensively. But the Blackhawks definitely need Bertuzzi to stay consistent in the goal scoring category to help this team remain competitive without Connor Bedard. Also, undoubtedly, Frankie Nazar needs to be better as he's stepping into the top line center role. He's now gone 20 consecutive games without scoring a goal, all the way back to just before Halloween, Blackhawks fans, on October 28th. I think that was a game against the Ottawa Senators, which the Blackhawks won 7-3. Connor Bedard had a hat trick in that one. No goals for Frank Nazar ever since, and it's completely unacceptable. And I watched Nazar. I analyzed Nazar's game pretty heavily on Saturday night. Not a lot else was going on for the Blackhawks, so I spent my time by focusing a lot on Nazar when he was on the ice. And some people, even according to some media members post-game, were asking Jeff Blashill about him, and a couple of guys said, they thought Nazar had a good game. I could not disagree anymore. While he did finish with 3 shots on goal, had a couple of good scoring chances, used his wheels well a couple of times, defensively, he was not good once again, which has been the case for really the last 3 games since I broke down Nazar's, defensive stats on Deep Dive 3.0. And I mentioned during that I was a little surprised that the numbers were so shoddy, but maybe I wasn't paying, admittedly, enough attention to Nazar's lackluster defense, because now that I've, outlined that and been really looking at that more so, Nazar's defense has not been good recently. And the amount of times that he turned over the puck Saturday night against Detroit, I'm not kidding. I don't know how many he was credited for, but it could have been like 7 or 8. He was a turnover machine. And the Blackhawks need him to be better than he's been over this last stretch of games. Need him to break that 20-game goal drought, and need him to be using his wheels effectively and generating offense for this team, because without Connor Bedard, Frankie Nazar is undoubtedly the most talented center iceman that the Blackhawks have left on the roster, and they're going to lean on him heavily and need him to snap that goal drought and be producing offensively for this team to even have a chance of remaining competitive and winning a couple of games without Connor Bedard. Then I'm looking at number 76, Nick Lardis, who I know is only one game into his NHL career thus far, but the Blackhawks are going to need his goal scoring and that shoot first mentality that I keep talking about. I thought it was really refreshing the way that Lardis was just rifling the puck on cage, and they're going to need that without Bedard, like Blashill said, to score some of those greasy goals, both at even strength and on the power play. And I think the man advantage is really where we need Nick Lardis to step up, because the Blackhawks have been good on the power play this year. And Nick Lardis, we've seen the one-timer down in Rockford, and he was rifling it pretty hard in his NHL debut on Saturday. I think he has the ability to score some nasty goals from that right dot with the one-timer, and the Blackhawks need him to in order for special teams play to remain a crucial ingredient of how the Blackhawks have won some games so far this year. Then also, Teuvo Teravainen, I think he needs to step up without Connor Bedard. And I also think, like I outlined in segment 1, Blashill needs to put him in more offensive-minded situations, because on the third line with Dickinson and Mikheyev right now, it just isn't cutting it. While they can do good things defensively, I think Oliver Moore can go into that spot and really give Blashill kind of the same thing with more speed. But what Teuvo Teravainen provides to this team, while I've talked about how he's not my favorite because he's kind of a passive player, doesn't really shoot the puck all that aggressively in the offensive zone, his creativity and his playmaking in transition, the Blackhawks are going to need that without Connor Bedard. So that's why I want to see Teravainen elevated up to that second line, maybe with a shoot-first player like Andre Burakovsky or a shoot-first player like Ryan Donato. I just think we need Teravainen's creativity and offensive playmaking, which there's not a ton of on this team. Obviously, Bertuzzi's been good, but that's not really his bread and butter. Andre Burakovsky, he's been good. He plays with speed. He's not really much of a playmaker, as good as he's been for the Blackhawks this year. Teuvo Teravainen is a playmaker, and the Blackhawks need him to have more offensive situations than he's been put in these last few weeks. And then last but certainly not least, while I could go with Spencer Knight here, Blackhawks fans, I think that one kind of speaks for itself. If the Hawks want to be good without Bedard, if the Hawks want to be good for the rest of the season, they need Spencer Knight to be standing on his head. It's pretty obvious when you dive through the stats and the analytics. But I'm going with Alex Vlasic here. The Blackhawks need him to turn into a shutdown defender once again in order to win some of these games, maybe 3-2 or 2-1 or 4-2. And I just feel like we've gotten too much inconsistent play from Alex Vlasic for a guy who is one of the more experienced defensemen on this uber young blue line, right? And I just feel like Vlasic, while it is natural for him as a guy who plays a lot of ice time and mostly happens in defensive situations, there are going to be hiccups, but I feel like there have been too many of those so far this year. And the consistency hasn't been just kind of what we expect to see from Alex Vlasic, especially with how well he fared in his first couple of years in the NHL. The Blackhawks need to have him be a shutdown top pairing defenseman once again during the stretch without Connor Bedard, to be a fortified defensive group and to win some of these, low scoring affairs, because when they give up 3 goals without Connor Bedard in the lineup, even with Connor Bedard, when they give up more than 3 goals, they have a tough time winning games this year. That's only going to be increased without number 98 suiting up for at least the final 7 games of December and probably a couple of games early on in 2026 as well. All right, there are the players that I'm looking at the most to step up in Connor Bedard's absence these next couple of weeks. Coming up in just a minute, before I close out today's show, still have to get into the latest updates on former first-round pick Lukas Reichel. But first, do got to talk to you all about another one of today's sponsors here on Locked On Blackhawks, which is Indeed. You just realized your business needed to hire someone like yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Well, it's easy. Just use Indeed, because when it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other sites, because Indeed Sponsored Jobs puts your post right at the top of the page and helps you reach the right candidates faster. They make sure your post is seen by the right candidates right now. Skip all of those unnecessary questions and steps, because now you can speed up your hiring process, and you'll also get a $75 sponsored job credit when you use Indeed. All you got to do is check out Indeed.com/lockedon right now and make sure to support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this very podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Then Indeed is all you need. Segment 3, before I close out today's episode, the Blackhawks traded Lukas Reichel to the Vancouver Canucks back on October 25th. And in less than 2 months' time, he's already found himself looking for a new home. As going back to even prior to Thanksgiving, there were some rumblings that Reichel had been put on the trade block by the Canucks. Didn't, find a new home ever since. Nothing really came to fruition there. And amidst his struggles since joining on with the Canucks organization, just yesterday, on Sunday, Vancouver placed him on waivers. Yesterday, Reichel cleared, and now he has been assigned to AHL Abbotsford, where he's going to remain until when the Canucks are ever to find him a new destination. And I do really feel bad for Lukas Reichel because obviously he was given a fresh start out with the Canucks organization. They've been a dumpster fire as a whole, and Reichel just has not ever been able to get comfortable seemingly with his new team. In 14 games with Vancouver, Reichel has tallied just 1 assist. He has a -5 plus-minus ratio, 4 penalty minutes, just 9 shots on goal in 14 games, and has won only 40% of his faceoffs. So he has not been the answer down the middle that the Vancouver Canucks were looking for, which I don't think was really a surprise to any of us Blackhawks fans. Reichel has never fared well in the NHL as a center iceman. He's played his best hockey when he's been on the wing. So I thought that was an error of a decision by Vancouver in the first place. But I do really feel for Reichel, even though I think it was pretty obvious that he's kind of in this tweener situation going back to when he was in Chicago. Not necessarily a good enough guy to be up in the top 6, but brings a style of play that doesn't really mesh well down in the bottom 6. It just leaves him in this kind of awkward situation and hasn't ever been able to find his footing since joining on with the Canucks organization. And now Vancouver has given him and his agent permission to seek yet another trade. So Lukas Reichel could be on to his 3rd NHL club here sometime in the next couple of weeks. However, all 31 other NHL teams just got an opportunity to claim him through waivers, and none of them did, which, man, yeah, could not be easy for Lukas. But I do got to point out, Blackhawks fans, with Lukas Reichel going on waivers, if he were to have gotten claimed, or let's say the Vancouver Canucks trade him for future considerations, Kyle Davidson will officially gotten Ilya Mikheyev and a 2027 second-round pick from Vancouver in return for nothing. Straight up nothing, because when they acquired Mikheyev and that second to take on the rest of his contract, they sent back a 2027 4th-round pick. And then when the Blackhawks traded Reichel to the Canucks, they got that draft pick in return. So if the Canucks get rid of Reichel and don't get any return for it, that means they gave Ilya Mikheyev and a 2nd-round pick to Chicago for literally free, which, I mean, Kyle Davidson, whenever he does trades with the Vancouver Canucks, winds up working out in our manner. But I do feel really bad that Lukas just hasn't been able to get it going during his time with the Canucks organization. And you can't help but wonder if it's ever going to happen for him in the NHL at this point. I mean, not that he's old, but he's been around for these last couple of years. He's kind of had the same issues now for these last couple of years as well. So yeah, definitely a tough update there for Lukas Reichel. We'll see if another NHL club is willing to give him another opportunity here in these next couple of weeks. But for the time being, he's down in the AHL once again, playing with the Canucks minor league affiliate, the Abbotsford Heat. All right, that is going to take care of today's episode of Locked On Blackhawks. Thank you all again for joining me on the show. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't done so already. Really would love to reach my goal of 3,000 subscribers before 2025 comes to a close. Make sure to follow Locked On Blackhawks for free as well, wherever you may be listening to your podcasts. I'm your host, Jack Bushman. If you want to find me on X, you can do so at Jack Bushman2. My Strictly Blackhawks account can be found at Talkin' Hockey. Give it a follow so you don't miss any of the latest Blackhawks news and updates. Until tomorrow's episode, everyone, go Hawks. Man, would it be big to start off this 3-game road trip with a victory without Connor Bedard in the lineup. We'll see if they can make it happen. I'll be going through a recap on tomorrow's episode. Until then, enjoy the rest of your days, Blackhawks fans. I'll see you on next time on the Locked On Blackhawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.